have.
800 of it.
But, so we got the kind of advanced copy to review, so I haven't reviewed the new one, but I don't think much has changed.
Are we ready?
We are.
Since you guys got another meeting coming up here, we promise we'll get you upstairs when you need to.
Yes.
Some of you may recognize both of us. We're the tag team duo for this project. Fortunately, we like to think for our participants, Carl and I have been with this project since day one. So we've been with it for well more than 15 years, and we're calling about 15 years right now. And as you probably are aware, you saw the articles, we hit another milestone just on Friday. So good timing to come in and talk to you tonight. My name is Brian Werner. I'm the Public Affairs Coordinator for NISP, and Carl is the project manager. So I'm going to do just to bring you up to speed on some of that, and then we'll answer any and all questions you have. And Carl will pipe in where he feels he needs to, if that works for you. We want you to ask some questions. We appreciate you all staying with us for this long. We know it's been a long road. Windsor's one of our larger participants. We use you as an example a lot about the absolute need for a project with the growth that's going along in the Northern Front Range. I don't have to tell you that.
And I don't know what this has to say, but Dennis is one of the few folks that I think from day one, I don't know if there ought to be like an honorary group, but from day one when we started this business in 2002, Dennis has been part of that.
Well, unfortunately,
That was my
Biz
next
West
statement.
probably didn't get that message, because in the article that came out, they didn't even mention Windsor as a participant.
In which one on this week, the Biz West?
Yep.
I can
It just
tell you
came
about the
out.
Biz West at some point. I'm not here to talk about the horror stories for the public affairs program, but they have been numerous in terms of just working with the media and getting the accurate, informative message across. And it's taken us a long time. I tell people that it took probably 8 years for us to get the local newspaper in Fort Collins to stop talking about the project being a dam on the river. Okay, it's not a dam on the river. It took 8 years for us to get that through. So it hasn't been an easy road in terms of some of the stuff that we do. We stayed with it. We think we're at a good place right now. We see a light at the end of the tunnel, and we want to bring you up to speed today on what's going on and then answer any and all your questions. So again, Brian and Carl. Okay. Project, I'm not going to go into great detail on background tonight. We want to get you into where we are today, but briefly, it's two reservoirs, Glade and Gailton. Glade's built northwest of Fort Collins, will be a little larger than Horsetooth Reservoir. Okay, the difference in the two is Horsetooth will still have more surface acreage. Horsetooth is about 1,900 surface acres. Glade will be 1,700. Okay, when it's full, that's still a lot of flat water recreation. And Glade and Gailton combined give you that 40,000 acre feet of yield. Windsor's into this project for 3,300, is that right, Dennis? For sure. 3,300 of that 40,000 acre foot yield. Gailton is essential out there northeast of Greeley because we're going to do some exchanges with the two largest ditch companies in the Poudre Basin. And by doing so, we're going to take a little bit of their water year in and year out. You can see the two ditches companies there, New Cash and Larimer and Weld. Pump that into Glade every year in and year out, even on years when the water right doesn't come in to play, so that we can guarantee you all that 40,000 acre foot yield, and for you particular 3,300 acre feet a year from this project. Good years and bad years. All right. The participants, 4 water districts and 11 cities and towns. As I was mentioning earlier, we're right in the bullseye of growth in northern Colorado. You're all aware of that. The 3 fastest growing cities in northern Colorado, Windsor, Frederick, and Erie, or Firestone and Erie, are the top 3 fastest growing cities, are all NISP participants. And then you add in a couple of the others. You put in Severance and Frederick, Dacono, and you get a whole bunch of the fastest growing cities. We know that water is an absolute necessity for that. But this gives you an idea of the geographical scope of it, including the Morgan County Water Quality District out on the eastern end there. And that's in your packet as well. Okay, it's kind of nice when we get to a point that we can get some real visualization of the project. This is what the complex Glade will look like on the the right front is the 4-bay reservoir with the pump plant, Glade in the background. So we'll be pumping up from a 4-bay up into Glade Reservoir. But it's real nice when we're to the point in this project that we can show you what it's gonna start looking like. It seems more real at that point. All right, I gotta go backwards. And then that's what Galeton will roughly look like. Northeast of Greeley will store a little over 45,000 acre feet of water. And by that storage, we're gonna be able to guarantee those ditch companies and those farmers that they'll get the same amount of water plus some that we're taking year in and year out and storing up in Glade Reservoir.
Which is northwest, east, what?
Okay, so, Brian, that is the one that's northwest of Fort Collins. If you know
Right.
where you go up to Pooter Canyon, it's just north of the intersection of Highway 14 and 287. And then Galeton is off of Highway 14 where it takes the diagonal and it goes northeast. It'll be on the north side of that diagonal.
And so Brian, is our water coming solely from Glade, or would it be supplied by both?
No, you'll be getting water out of Glade.
Okay.
Yeah, the Galeton Reservoir is for the agriculture
It's
ditch
all ag,
companies.
okay.
Yep, yep. Okay, timeline, this is what we wanted to bring you up to speed on, where we're at. Another big box we got checked off last year. We had been working a long time on adding more meat to our fish and wildlife mitigation enhancement plan. We've been working very closely with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Colorado Water Conservation Board, and we certainly believe that we've developed what we consider the most robust mitigation enhancement plan that's ever been put on paper for a water project in the state of Colorado. This is 136 pages. Just to give you some idea, when the draft EIS came out in 2008, this consisted of 1 page. Okay, it's 136 pages today. A lot of detail in it, and a lot of things that we'll mention a few of the highlights that we certainly believe has helped get us to this point and will get us to that finish line, okay? You have to do anytime, we're in the federal permitting process because we have to identify the impacts and then how we're going to mitigate those impacts, okay? As we say, it's not just water projects, it's whether you're building a highway or a new school or something. If you're dealing with federal lands and whatsoever, you get into this process. So what happened last year, late in the year, in September, we got the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission approval. Shortly thereafter, we got the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Once those two agencies sign off on this plan, it's sent to the governor, and Governor Hickenlooper did sign off, approved our state fish and wildlife mitigation plan. That is a big box in terms of pushing towards project completion. And we'll talk a little bit about what's in there too. Okay, Fish and Wildlife Mitigation Enhancement Plan, that's what FWMEP stands for. As we talked about, this is the cover of it. We got it submitted, we got through the process, and Governor Hickenlooper in November. I think I'd get smarter by now. Okay, we did get the letter from the governor. That's a big step. The governor has not formally endorsed the project, but he's done everything but. We've got him on tape. We've got him recorded talking about this project and the Fish and Wildlife Mitigation Plan. That's front and center on our website, on our homepage for this, which is gladereservoir.org, if you've never been there before. Okay, a couple of things where I say they're a robust plan. We certainly believe in the participants, and I think Dennis can vouch for this, the years that we've gone through this process of putting enough on the table to get us to the finish line, okay? But we realize this is a chunk of money, and we're not out there throwing money just to be throwing money. When we find something that makes sense, we talk it over with the participants committee, and we came up this about 2 years ago with what we call conveyance refinement, and we think this is probably the biggest step that we took in terms of pushing, especially the Fish and Wildlife Mitigation Plan, to the finish line. This is where we developed an idea. If you remember those two reservoirs, one up here northwest of Fort Collins and one northeast of Greeley, so roughly they're like this, okay? We figured out a way to deliver some of the water out of Glade Reservoir over, down the Poudre River and still get it into our system, okay? So you guys have that water supply. So instead of all the water going out of Glade in a pipeline, we got about a third of it, we'll deliver it in, directly into the Poudre River, run it through downtown Fort Collins, and keep a live river year-round in an area that has historically not had that, okay? It is, for all intents and purposes, dried up in years past at certain locations, generally below bypass, right below the diversion structures in town. So by adding this, it's about $100 million of water that we're gonna be putting down there that you're still gonna have access to once we take it back out below Fort Collins. We're working on a peak mitigation program where we figured out a way to guarantee bypass of the high 3 flow days on the Poudre River, which helps the health of the river, aquatic species, moving sediment, a number of things like that, and still maintain that water supply, okay? And we're gonna do that in roughly 90% of all years, okay? And we're still gonna be able to bypass a little bit in those other 10% years, but when we get into the real dry times, our first goal is to make sure that you guys have that yield, okay? So we're gonna maintain that, but peak flow program, we're quite proud of that. Collaboration, that's all that this is all about. We're working with the cities of Fort Collins, Windsor, Timnath, Greeley, everybody that's involved in it. We are working on how can we do things that still keep water in the river and do good for that river. Commitment to water quality, we're really spending a lot of time on that. We're gonna get there in the timeline. One of the boxes that we still have to check off this year is submitting a water quality certification to the state of Colorado, and that precedes a record of decision. Bottom line there, we're gonna make sure that you have that yield, the 3,300 acre feet that Windsor's in it for, the 40,000 that we're in for the whole project. And one other thing with that conveyance refinement I wanna mention is, I briefly mentioned those diversion structures in Fort Collins. One of the things that we've agreed to do as part of this is build bypasses around those diversion structures. That's where the river has historically dried up, and you'll see a picture every now and then from some opponents to this project. See, the river dries up and they're gonna make it worse. No, the river has dried up, we're gonna make it better, okay? We're gonna make sure guarantee that water we're releasing from Glade Reservoir, 18 CFS in the wintertime, 25 CFS in the summertime, makes it all the way through downtown Fort Collins.
Brian,
Uh-huh,
hate to interrupt you.
sure.
I've heard arguments on both sides for years, but the peak flow, one of the arguments has been mentioned, is it's healthy, it cleans the river.
Mhm.
Did you say we would maintain peak flow except for 3 days?
No, we won't, what we've agreed to do is bypass the peak flow on the Poudre River for the
Okay.
3 high days each year, okay?
Okay.
So every year it's gonna get those three
So
high
with the
days
3 highest
scouring it,
days-
yes.
Okay.
Except for, and that's why I said 90% of all the years,
Some
okay?
years,
Except for the
gotcha.
couple other years.
Okay.
And even in those other years, it may not be 3 days, okay? It depends a lot on the hydrology then. We're gonna make sure we maintain your yield first.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Still can't get this right. Okay, this is just a map showing that, the pipelines that we're gonna take out of Glade. And this map is in your packets too. We're gonna run it out east and pick it up somewhere around county line and then run it south, okay? This is that stretch of river, 12 miles, where we're gonna drop it right back into the river and pick it up downstream of downtown Fort Collins. That just gives you a visual on how we're going to do that. So we're gonna sit near the canyon mouth and eliminate dry up points. And as we keep saying, we're pretty much guaranteeing that the river doesn't go dry as it historically has.
So, I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, go back
Go
to
ahead.
that, so you're gonna add a third of your delivered flow through the Poudre, but it's just gonna go just through downtown Fort Collins, and then you're gonna pick it back?
It's gonna come this way, and we're gonna pick it up at the Timnath Inlet right here, right downstream. If you know where Mulberry is in Fort Collins, right where Fort Fun is, it's just that diversion structure's right behind there.
One of the reasons well, there are numerous reasons for picking that point, but primarily was keeping the quality of the water high. That we've done millions of dollars of work now on the water quality studies associated with the project, and right at that point is the transition from a real good, high-quality water, good for drinking water supply to, you have a combination of ag return flows coming in below that point, wastewater flows and such, and it drops off dramatically. So we went down as far as we could while still maintaining what I'd think of as a horse tooth quality supply going into the system.
So all this talk of flow through Fort Collins, what about Windsor? Are we gonna see diminished flow?
You will see diminished flow during kind of that peak flow time. For most of the time, not much. A lot of the flow associated with this project is exchange with the New Cache and Larimer and Weld companies, and both of those divert upstream of you. And what that exchange means is we're putting in a like amount of water into their system and taking water they would have otherwise diverted up at Glade. So that water didn't make it down to this point. So not a lot of change to down here, but during the flood events, it will be less flooding.
So spring runoff time,
Yeah.
we'll
And I
see
would-
less flow.
During in those kind of 50% years, when it's real high runoff, this year probably not so much if we were online. Last few years, where it's been a lot of flow in the river, those kind of years, we'd be doing quite well.
In some ways, it's whether you can tell the difference between thigh-high and knee-high water too. We're trying to get some more visuals so we can show public exactly what 25 CFS in the river is gonna look like in addition to, the river in downtown Fort Collins hit 3 CFS in June this year. Okay, not many fish can get by on that. We would have been adding 25 more CFS to that to put it at 28, where you at least got sustainable waters for fish. Okay, our timeline, one of the things that we also are working on is a reservoir release bill. It got passed by the state legislature this year, so we've talked about releasing that water at Glade and picking it up down here. We needed a way to guarantee legally that that water wouldn't be intercepted between this point and this point. Okay, so our former general manager, Eric Wilkinson, really put his heart and soul into this for 2 years to get it passed and listened to a lot of people and brought a lot of people together. This was probably the best example of collaboration I think we'll ever see in terms of a bill. Got 99.9% of the people to buy off on that, and the state legislature passed it this year. We just were at Colorado Water Conservation Board last week at a hearing where we donate that to the Conservation Board and they protect it through Fort Collins, basically. It's a 120-day review period, which kicked off last Thursday, so 2 months, or a couple, 4 months, we'll
I'm
know.
gonna just quick add to
Yeah.
that too, that it would seem logically that doing something good for the environment would be a fairly easy thing to do. This thing, I'll hand it to our manager and our attorneys and some other staff that, actually it didn't even get out of committee last year. It failed, and it was kind of a bipartisan fail. There was a lot of skepticism, worry, are we changing water law and whatnot. So they had numerous meetings where they got all the stakeholders together, generally down in Denver. And the long and short of it is, it ended up passing the legislature. There were only 3 against. I forget how many
Yeah.
voted for, 50,
90+%.
but it was, so that was a learning exercise, at least for this Mr. Smith, who's never seen that type of thing before, but it was good.
Sorry, on that prior slide.
Sure.
Where you had the donation,
Yeah,
donation to the Colorado Water Conservancy.
yeah, they're the ones that hold in-stream flow rights in the state of Colorado. They're the
Okay.
agency that has the legal capability of doing that, so it's just donating them to, they protect it for us. We're not donating your water, we're not giving up your
So
water.
like a conservation easement, they just
Yeah.
hold it.
Similar to that.
So then the hearing on July 18th was over that particular topic?
Yeah,
then,
we just,
the-
we're there to say, here's what, their staff tells their board, here's what's going on. There's a 120-day period for people to comment. We don't see much problem with this.
Yeah.
And Brian, is it, did you say it was a RISD? It's recreational and channel
It's,
diversion?
it's not I don't believe it's under the RISD category. It's not.
It's kind of well, it's now part of the bill. I mean,
Right.
it's law that
but it's not being classified as a RISD.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you that. Yeah,
Brian, do you have the bill number? Do you have it? Can you recall?
Not handy.
we'll get it to
We
you.
can get, yeah,
We'll get it to you.
That would, I just don't know.
Yep. Nope, we'll get it to you.
I wanna say it's 1070, but I'd
Okay.
be lying.
Again, this is the big news from last week. That's a picture of the 4-volume set. It's 1,409 pages long with probably a couple thousand pages of appendices and references to reports. It's very thorough. One of the things that we're saying to telling people is, it's been exhaustive in detail. Yeah, it's taken us 15 years. Yeah, we did a draft EIS, and then we did a supplemental draft, and now we got a final. But it's it's still showing that this meets your purpose and need, the 15 NIST participants, at 40,000 acre feet. And it's saying that your needs certainly haven't slowed down in 15 years. In fact, you've grown more. So we think it supports very well the preferred alternative, which is Glade Reservoir and Gailton. Okay. There will be no public hearings. Some of you remember the public hearings we've had in the past. We're thankful that the Army Corps isn't going to do public hearings, although we would gear up if we had to. We learned a lot in that process. And we're gonna ask at the next NIST participants meeting on August 6th, we're going to ask the participants to prepare some comment letter to the Army Corps of Engineers. It doesn't have to be real long, but it says, yes, we still need this water. Please approve this project. You've got a bill number.
I have a bill. It's SB 18-170.
So again, a big day to get that out. I said, I told Shane, thanks for commenting in the newspaper. We were trying to get our message out last Friday. Okay, what's left? The water quality certification. We hope to submit that to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPH&E, in September. Our water quality people are some of the top water quality people in the state. They've been working on these for a long time. In fact, they've gone through that with the other project, Chimney Hollow Reservoir. So they know what to look out for. They know how to prep one of these things. And they've been working with CDPH&E staff. We've got some very sharp consultants on our staff as well. This will be submitted in September, October. Technically, the state has 12 months to reply to that, to say yes or no, to give us that certification, that permit. We think that we're gonna get that a little quicker because we've been working with them. We'd like to, this step needs to happen before the Army Corps of Engineers can release its record of decision. The other one we're working on is this Larimer County IGA, which we're working on recreation aspects up at Glade Reservoir, as well as some of the pipeline routing impacts. We're kind of paying attention tonight. There's another little hearing over in Larimer County, a continuation of the Thornton pipeline. So we're continuing to watch that and see where that goes. Carl and staff had a meeting with Larimer County last week, so we're very much talking with the county staff and commissioners. We've kept them up to speed on what's going on with this project too. And all 3 current commissioners support the project. We've got them on our endorsement list, which is in your packets. Went the wrong way again. Okay, so there is that sort of that finish line, I guess. Record of decision, Army Corps' final decision. We're saying sometime in 2019. Okay, we're hoping summer to early fall, but we'll be happy if we see it in 19. Okay, this project has taken a while. So within that record of decision, they'll include that 401 water quality certification. So that has to be finalized. Like that, the end is in sight. Okay, what are we doing now? What else is going on after we can take a breath with that final EIS? Design activities, and I'll let Carl speak to that here in just a few minutes. The Highway 287 relocation. Will we start building this project hopefully in 2021, 2022? First thing we have to do is relocate Highway 287 so we can get into the site and start building a dam for you. We're working on financing. The ditch company agreements, so those 2 ditch companies I talked about, New Cash and Larimer and Weld, we've been talking to them for years and years, but we need to finalize agreements with them so we can work that exchange. And as I said, we're gonna be giving them some water in addition to what we're taking from them. We're probably gonna have some ditch company improvements. There may be some other things involved in those agreements, but we've got some drafts in front of them now, so that's getting closer than we were before this. Construction schedule, this is the thing that Carl and his engineering friends geek out on. So they put these up and you can see lots of little boxes. But if you look out to the end, at the top, that's Glade Reservoir. You're looking at watering Glade Reservoir in 2026 is what we're looking at right now, okay? That's these last two boxes out here. And then the South Platte Water Conservation Project is Gailton Reservoir. So they watch these sorts of things as we go and all that.
So that's your estimated
Yep.
earliest
Yep.
date is
You know,
2026?
as of today, Carl updated that this morning, believe it or not.
So, yeah, cause I think I'm legally blind, I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're up there, but that's about as far as I can see. So that's really, I mean, if we're doing construction 2021, 2022, we think it's 5 years to basically have water in there and be ready for our use, is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. We've got to, and Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got to, once we start putting water in, we've got state dam inspection rules, so we gotta bring it up to a certain level before they'll let us to test it out,
Sure.
before they let us take it out. We can't drop one in and you drop one out the same day.
Right,
Well, I'm not sure what the level is. There's a certain level we gotta get to.
is that kind of your dead storage, whatever?
Well, it's really, I mean, if we can take the water out if we need to, but you're limited to a foot per day, and it's a 280-foot tall dam, so it's gonna take, in theory, 280 days of fill, and when we're initially filling it up, you know, you don't have a lot of area behind the dam, so you're not putting much in, and then it's gradually growing. Obviously, if we put some water in and we get into a real drought situation or something, you know, the NIST participants will decide whether to take that water out or not. And of course, if Mother Nature blesses us in 2026 with a wonderful year, then hooray. But if we get, you know, dry year, then it could take a bit of time.
Our water right for this project would have filled the reservoir in 2015 and 16, because there was that much water available under our water right. So we've seen some, since 2009, except for 2012, we've seen generally some good years, and we would have been able to fill Glade Reservoir in Gailton and still send a couple million acre feet out of state to Nebraska.
So
Yeah, good.
I think the question was asked, but this is a construction schedule, but it's not necessarily a delivery schedule. So when you are done with the construction, and I think you said start filling Glade in
In
2026.
2026.
How long after that would you first be able to actually deliver?
You know, conceivably, if we get Glade up quite a ways, as early as 2026, what I'm thinking is more like 10 years from now, 2028 or so. Let's give it a little bit of time, get water in there. Again, if it's just a critical time and it's, hey, we need the water absolutely today and we have it sitting in there, then, you know, then we'll let it go.
But the infrastructure will be in place by then?
Yeah.
In 2026?
2026 for Glade and 2027 for the South Platte Water Conservation Project side.
So my question and my concerns would be, you know, this is a needed project in the area, but it's been long time going, like 15 plus years.
Yep.
Sometimes it feels like we're no further ahead than where we, you know, were. I mean, we've accomplished a lot along the way. And the group already came out on Friday, said they intend to continue to fight this. They have a bit more support, more dollars, more money. So what does that do, or what are your plans? Because that could further delay, so we're talking about 2026, maybe 2028. But if they're already gonna ask for an extension of the review period, and then they're probably gonna, I don't know what else they're gonna maybe intend to fight, but they have already said that they're still not happy with what they've initially seen in what's been delivered as of Friday. So what does that do? Because in my conversations with all of my fellow small communities, who we all are participants, But in the 8 years that we participated, our costs have doubled. So when I first was on this board, we were looking at a $42 million intake. Now we're at 89, and I've told this board, you might as well plan on 100, but now if we're even talking another 10 years, I mean, we've got a plan for even further escalation, and that's if we don't have to continue to fight it. So, right, I mean, this thing is gonna and so some of the players are saying, how are we gonna afford this? How do you bring this
Sure.
back to our communities and continue? And we've had a board member who asked several months ago, at what point? Can
All
we-
legitimate concerns, there's no
Right.
question. We're gonna get a permit on this project, we're gonna get wet water for you. When you have that, you're gonna have, it'll be like gold, okay? Project's gone up in price. You mentioned the opposition, they're never gonna be happy with anything, so their bottom line is no project, so we don't spend a lot of time catering to
Well,
them.
It's
I know,
probably
but,
worth-
but at the same time though, they continue to,
Sure.
they can continue to
Yeah.
delay,
Yeah.
which only escalates the cost for all of us who are involved in the project.
So, you're right, and we're counting on them suing, they've said they would sue. And that gets us into an interesting land. The same group is suing on other projects right now. So they sued most recently on the Chatfield reallocation where they're bringing the reservoir up. They sued our Windy Gap firming project. We know they intend to sue Gross, Gross Reservoir Enlargement for Denver Water, and then ours. They, on Chatfield, they lost. Chatfield,
And how long did that take before that they,
Chatfield, it kind of took until so they never filed for a stay or a injunction. So Chatfield just kind of hung out for a bit and finally said, well, we're gonna start moving ground. And that seemed to get the judge's attention and all of a sudden they got a decision. So a lot of, you're trying to figure out what's going through the judge's mind. Windy Gap firming, when did the lawsuit happen, last fall?
That's all.
Yeah. Much of the time is spent just getting your record together. It's not a lawsuit that goes to a trial. This goes before a judge and he has folks that are looking through. It's basically, did you follow the process? And the torturous time it has taken us on this project, particularly since '08, because that's when the decision was made to do a supplemental. And the Corps said, look, we can go to court and let the judge decide what we're going to study, or we can do everything, and we didn't think it was going to take this long. But that was the decision made to literally look at everything to the nth degree and spend, instead of maybe $5 million, $10 million on an EIS, well over $20 million on an EIS. But we feel like the technical side is good. The process has been very pure. By pure meaning, you're looking for shenanigans. If I'm the other side, I'm looking for, are we in the Corps cozy? And we have, because we've known there would be likely a lawsuit, because the opposition has been, they've said, if you get a permit, we will sue. There was no, if you do this and that, then no, it was, if you get a permit, you'll sue. Okay, well, we'll take you for your word. So some of this is then learning through our parallel project, Windy Gap firming, which is ahead. I would say that what we have going for us as an advantage is knowing what they went through. A lot of time went into, thus far, just getting their record put together. Record is all the boxes that got put together that are behind the scenes, behind that EIS. I don't know, tens or hundreds of thousands of pages get scanned. We've already done that on NISP. Everything is completely to date. It's all digitized. It's ready to go. So that saves time. We do intend, and this will be a decision that participants are going to have to make, is we are pushing the main part of the final design off until we get the record of decision. At that time, we would start that final design, and that will take over a year to accomplish. And then it's going to be, do we go ahead and start moving forward on some things? If they're gonna sue, I just assume they sue early, and we can get the process going. It's we figure it's anywhere from a year to 2-year process.
And then that's not anticipated in any of the initial costs, so if that happens, then who pays for that? I'm assuming all of the participants will have to then ante up.
Different part, as Carl
for
said,
that.
Although-
we've got a lot of that already.
Or are
put
you
together.
already kind of anticipating that in some of the,
It is
Money
anticipated, in the legal budget for next year, I'm anticipating it. Although they sue the Army Corps of Engineers, so they sue the federal government. The federal government then turns it over to the Department of Justice. So in the case of Windy Gap, actually Jeff Sessions got a notice of that. And then Department of Justice takes it over. So we will enjoin ourselves into it to be a party and in the case of Windy Gap Firming, how many other parties? I mean, you've got Denver Water, State of Colorado, on our behalf.
Broomfield.
So, it's not kind of a lone wolf thing. You get all your friends, and again, you have the Fed. But that is a risk. It is a risk.
One of the things that we've been doing a real good job on is getting political support for this project. Okay, there's a political animal with this. But Senator Gardner's been a huge support from day one, okay? And we've got a couple of congressmen, and we'll be working with the 2 gubernatorial candidates, so.
but
We don't wanna
unfortunately,
have-
our 2 biggest players here, Fort Collins and Greeley, are not participants. And they sometimes have, carry a big, a big majority of the voice, but they're not even participants at this point. Hopefully, they're not gonna be opponents either, but that, I don't know.
We've been working to keep
I don't
them
know.
muted as much as we can.
Right, and we're gonna have a new governor at the helm,
Sure.
and that might change
Yeah.
some things too. And wasn't there a case forming that the Pooter was going to file a lawsuit? I don't know who the group was, on
behalf of itself, yeah.
for
That's
healthy
not going
rivers?
anywhere.
Is that not going anywhere? Okay,
That's-
good.
That's not going anywhere.
But
Okay.
what you've hit on, though, is I'll say an angst amongst staff as well as the NIST participants, and we just talked about it this past month. We'll talk about it again in August. What we're doing, it's all about risk, and we're weighing risk. There's risk associated with lawsuit versus the fact that this project is probably going up in cost, just with normal inflation, on the order of $3 million a month. And it's trying to balance that risk. And so what are things that, we're trying to do all we can to mitigate that risk where we can, but there are some things that we just can't mitigate, Some of the things that we're talking about doing next year, land acquisition and what we've called water secure. Water secure being working with the farmers under Lermenweld and New Cache to actually secure, basically make sure that water doesn't get sold out, and so pay for that privilege of keeping it there. Some of that will involve tangible assets, and we're working through that there will likely be a financing for activities associated with land right-of-way and acquiring those tangible assets.
So there are no tangible assets acquired
Presently-
at this point?
Presently, not. As part of the NIST group, we do own, Northern Water owns the actual reservoir site.
Okay.
That will ultimately get transferred to the NISP enterprise. I'm pretty sure they'll work out an arrangement there. So those are the things that we're working through, but you've got, it's the thing that we wrestle with every day on this. We also want to keep the momentum going. It's easier for a judge to deny something if the momentum is not there, if you haven't expended anything, and that's a delicate balance. And there's no easy booklet that we can follow that says do this, that, and, you know, luckily we've got good attorneys that have been through this before, advising us through this, and then you just look to all the other examples that are going on and hope that you're making the right decision.
Who is your legal
Trout
counsel?
and Rayleigh?
Okay.
Trout and Rayleigh, yeah.
Two questions regarding timeline and money. In terms of time, during the 1 to 2 year period of the legal challenge, you can continue trying to get water certification and some of those other steps you
Mhm.
talked about.
Well, that's gonna be done before a
That can
lawsuit's filed.
continue even with lawsuit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're on the schedule for a couple $1 million here pretty soon.
Mhm.
At what point would you see the participants needing to ante up and kick in total amount?
Well, the recommendation is going to be to the NISP participants, and we've talked a little bit about it, past meetings at our NISP Finance Committee meeting, to do a joint financing. If it were individual financing, the big money would start coming, I don't know, 2021 right now, I think, based on the new schedule. Instead, what it will be, that would be when we would first go out for the largest, the large bond issue on this. There will be allotment contracts, so they're basically will tell you what your handy dandy payments are going to be into this project. They will grow because we'll be doing multiple issues as we build this project. We won't go for the entire financing on day one. So your largest payment will commence, at the end of the project, but it'll get,
So you're gonna have to come back before the voters multiple times? Or is
This-
this not something that has to,
this-
is
this
this
is not
something that
something that
just
go-
all the individual
this is-
municipalities can make those
Yep.
decisions
Yep.
on the bonding?
Yep. So that is something that,
Because it's an enterprise,
A special
and so
enterprise.
enterprises can issue debt without going to a vote, so
Yep.
it'd be through everybody's water enterprise.
However they want to do it.
well, and in fact,
Okay.
yeah, it will be based upon, the ability to pay will be based upon, basically the allotment contracts then that you all own, within this project.
So you're gonna phase it in, so to speak?
So that hasn't been finalized, but we are gonna talk about it more. It's kind of our recommendation, just because when you look at how this project is gonna get built, and how the financing needs to happen, going back to you all, many times along the way and going, okay, now I need this big chunk. And then that would be fine, actually, as long as one of you doesn't say no.
Right.
And that's where
And then
this
what's the-
process works better.
What's the plan if participants, as you move along
Uh-huh,
down the pipeline, so to speak,
sure.
start dropping off or wanting to maybe not drop out completely, but have shares for sale? Are those that are still in get first right of refusal to anything? Does it go on the open market? What's the plan for that?
I would just say yes.
Okay.
The participants will have a
that
say in
is-
how that works.
That,
We'll be able to formulate the process. so to
You all
speak.
will be front and center on, do you wanna have first right of refusal or not? I can tell you, and Carl can vouch, that there is plenty of need for more water in northern Colorado. You've seen the growth numbers, okay? We know this is a chunk of change. We know that you guys have a lot of money hanging out there to get this water supply. But just to make you feel just a little better, at $1.1 billion, 40,000 acre foot yield is $27,500 an acre foot, okay? Right now, the going rate for a Calvert Big Thompson project unit is probably twice that. Okay, so if you're going out and buying
per acre foot.
per acre foot, yeah,
Per acre
per
foot.
acre foot, so it's probably per full acre foot, 1 acre foot yield, if you're doing apples to apples, NISP is still about half the cost.
Yeah. I tell folks.
I don't know if that
basic-
makes you feel any better, but,
You're getting a 1.2, you're getting about $2 billion worth of water value for about 1.1, 1.2 billion. I think it's gonna be closer to 1.2. But the tougher thing on top of all of that is if CBT Colorado Big Thompson units were available to you, that would be a nifty way to go. You can still keep getting them, you just can't find them anymore, and we're not making any more, and,
You
so-
can't find them in 40,000 acre foot hunks for belief. You have a question? Did you have a question right here? I know you were thinking of something.
Well, no, I mean, the financial analysis, of course, and the cost per share or unit
Mhm.
is based on a conjectured total cost at this
Mhm.
point. I mean, you really don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that is gonna cost.
Yeah. yeah. It could, hey, it could double,
Right.
maybe about even, but,
No, it
for the, it's not gonna double, it's not gonna
The
double.
mayor's, you know,
Yeah.
provided, said, it started off at
Yeah.
45 and now it's 89 and
sure.
that doubled.
Believe me, we understand that. Yeah,
Two questions about the financing. Of all of the 15 participants, is everybody paying their fair share so far? Their contracted amount, et cetera? Was that what an IGA that was signed?
Yep.
Yep.
15 years ago, or whenever that was said this is the schedule of the payments, because that's the payment he's referring to is next year's payment just to Windsor's over $2 million. This year's was over 600,000. And I suspect if we're not even thinking about financing until 21 or 22, what our payments are between in 20, 21, you know, et cetera, before we're actually going for the big debt financing. My
Well,
question is, this isn't small change to Windsor,
Sure.
we don't have that, I
Sure.
mean, we're having to look that far out right now, to come up with that, cause that's not in a, I'm not speaking for our finance guy behind me, he knows more about our numbers than I do, but I know that that's not small pocket change.
so for next year, and this is yet to be unfolded to the NIST participants, you'll get a memo here shortly, but we had a good discussion about this, kind of the balance. We are probably gonna cut back on the amount of cash we're asking for next year to amount more similar to this year. However, we are looking at issuing then the debt, for some of those asset-related things. You know, the payment associated with that debt won't actually, the first payment probably won't be until 2020. And it's, you know, it's not nowhere near of what you've been paying thus far, but you do have a point. It's gonna ramp up regardless of how we come up with, you know, how we come up with funding. To your first question though, everybody's been, we're all paid up.
Okay,
Everybody, they all
I
make
just
the
wanted to
payment.
make sure, not to throw anybody under the bus
No.
or calling out in public, I just wanted to know.
And the other thing, you know, and Dean's been part of this as well, that, we've had a financial analysis done on behalf, for all the NIST participants, just to see, is there a weak sister or multiple weak sisters, how are we doing? And actually, I was pleasantly surprised. We had that analysis updated based on the newest estimate. And there are 2 that could do better. One of those is planning on divesting part of their allocation. They acquired some Windy Gap in the meantime here recently. And so I anticipate that they're going to sell part of theirs here shortly, their allocation in this. The other, they're very small in this project. The blend of that credit rating is actually pretty strong. And looking at rates right now, rates for this type of effort are still holding very good. You know, and we're in that 3.5-ish range yet, which is, you know, cross the fingers. Construction escalation is what scares me, probably more. We are in a difficult time in construction right now in labor. Just getting good labor to run equipment. And that's something we're hearing universally from folks. However, we're tapping into, for this type of project, Windy Gap Firming is the same. This is kind of a specialized niche. There are big guys that do this. This is what Kiewitz do. And you know, these big companies, they bring everybody in, and they buy all their equipment brand new and they run it for 5 years and then they're done with it. But that probably has me more concerned. I'd like to see tariffs go down a little bit too. That's a whole nother story.
So you mentioned there's gonna be a board who's gonna have the oversight.
Sure.
Who's gonna be, or is there a board already, and who does every participant have one seat at the table, or?
Sure.
Or how is that gonna be?
So ultimately, the northern board is kind of the ultimate say. Every time I go to them with a contract, they say, did the Windy Gap participants approve it? And
The
so,
NIST
or the NIST
You're
participants
in,
approve
you're
it.
in this,
Yeah.
not with
We have not formalized, and I think that will get formalized within the allotment contract of how that, if there is a board. Right now, it's a participant group, we meet monthly. We have done an amazing job, and it's been interesting to watch the participants work with each other, because, you know, you got 15 entities, and we work on consensus. And we've yet to have a decision that there was a dissenting voice. Sometimes it took a couple of months to get that one kind of circled around again, but we're gonna have to think about that if moving forward, does the one that has 1,000 acre feet have the same voice as the 6,000 acre feet? And I can't tell you. My hope is that we generally follow consensus though, because it has been a group activity from day one, and you know, I'd hate to have it where we start having divisions, and all of a sudden you have 4 that are this way, and you know, and 11, and that's no good. So we try to work through those things, and again, it takes time.
And we've built a couple projects, Windy Gap, Southern Water Supply Pipeline, for participants in some form like this, so we have some background in putting this together. I know you're almost out of here, you
Yep.
gotta go
We are.
upstairs for yours. There's some information, our bullet points are in that for you, we've got a little card here. We've talked to Dennis, we'd love to get you, anybody that wants to go out, even on an individual basis, we'll run you out and show you the site, because it needs more when you get out on site. Yes,
Yeah, just one,
sure.
Blade holds 170,000, we're gonna be using 40,000. The rest is for future.
Rest is the carryover, you need about a 4-to-1 ratio in order that we can guarantee you
Do like
40,000 a year in and year out, you gotta have 170,000 acre feet of storage. Yeah. So in the dry years, when we don't put much water in it, you've still got 40,000 acre feet. The engineers have done their modeling, and that's what we came up with to optimize how much storage we would need to guarantee you guys that 40,000 acre foot year in and year out.
I was telling Chief how he ran that red
Yeah.
light.
So what are your next
I think it was so
future
red,
plans? I know at one
but I
time,
think it got
we had something at the rec center where I think we had didn't we have a lot of the community participants kind of come? You guys gave an update.
Yeah.
Do you foresee
arrested.
something like that?
We will do
the
that
next time
if
we
you
get some
ask
other
us.
good
If you
news or something, or what?
Yeah, we love good news. We will come and do whatever you all would like us to in the community. We're not shying away from this stuff. I mean, I'll go out and talk to Save the Pooter folks, and I've been in debates with them before. So this project's gonna get built because it needs to, and it stands on its own 2 feet, and all of that. Yeah, it's been uncomfortable a little bit to watch the sausage getting made. There's no question. There's no question.
We do offer as well, and we did this with Windsor a few years ago, be happy to take you on a tour, even, I think.
Just talking about
Cool.
that, yeah. So,
So, good.
Shane, Dennis, anytime you guys are interested, again, if it's just one of you, got an afternoon, you wanna get out and see it,
Well, we've
We
got
were-
several new folks.
Hey, can I ask anybody on the board, if you're interested in this, please let me know. And then if there's multiple of you, I'm gonna put you with, Death Trap, Lucas there, and us, and we'll drive you.
yeah,
Crash
you
Lucas.
find out and we'll meet you there or come over and ride out with you, we'll do whatever's necessary. I mean,
You just had a tour, I think, of the.
yeah, we do tours a lot of the time,
I
but we
signed
do
up for
special,
that, but had to cancel.
we do special tours for participants anytime you
We
want.
did one a few years ago. that we
Again,
had
this-
Pizza here first.
I guess
we left
one
at
of the few
about
days you
5:30.
did.
Yep.
It was
Yep.
kinda dark
With
when we got
several
home.
other different folks from water boards, which is
Yeah.
also interesting to be
Uh-huh.
able to have conversations.
Yeah,
We had Severance, I think, came on that.
And he-
day.
Yeah.
And board, a quick housekeeping, we are going to, ask you to remove item C4, that's the IGA with Loveland and Larimer County. We just heard back from Larimer County legal staff today, and they're like, oh, we have a couple questions, well, okay, so we're just gonna pull it, so it's gonna happen, don't worry, it's gonna happen, but just not tonight, because if we're gonna change it all, we don't want to adopt it, so.
You look at the colors and.
And I think that,